Steve Gamache with a Chef Knives to Go quick look product video. Today we're looking at the Kohetsu SLD series Nakiri 165mm knife. This line of knives has a core steel of SLD semi-stainless steel, and it's right on the edge of being stainless. They call it a semi-stainless, or we'll label it semi-stainless because the chromium content, I believe, could be anywhere from 11 to 13%, and I think a knife has to be 13 to 13.5 to be considered full stainless, or for a steel, I should say. So if you treat this knife with any kind of normal maintenance and wipe it down, don't let water just sit on it for long periods of time, it should really act pretty much as a stainless knife. As long as when you're done cutting with it, just wipe it down, clean it off, wipe it off, dry it. Just don't let it sit for long periods of time with water or moisture on it. The heat treat rating on this steel is 61 to 62 Rockwell, and the construction is a full stainless soft cladding over the top of that core steel. This is a pretty polished blade, so it's going to be quite reflective in my lighting here, but it's a little hard to tell, but there's a line there of the cladding where it hits the core steel. Incidentally, the blade face on the cladding is really interesting. It's got this kind of lattice work pattern. If I can get it to show up here without getting too shiny, but that's a good example right there. So it's this really cool lattice work pattern, and what that does for us, besides being visually interesting, it also lends to this knife pretty impressive non-stick or low-stick properties on ingredients. So cutting things like soft potatoes and other ingredients which can kind of get sucked onto the blade. I was quite impressed with this and its Santoku brother, how well they did on non-stick. It was very impressive, actually. So this has a nice balance of characteristics. A lot of times a polished blade like this, things will just get sucked onto it and really stick to it. But in this case, it did not. So that's a nice other characteristic of this finish on the blade. So it's one of the more interesting finishes I've seen in a while. Construction, we covered that. Let's see, weight is 152 grams, about 5.4 ounces, and the blade length is right about 165. The overall length right about 12 inches. The spine thickness at the heel chin area right above that is about 3.6, but then it tapers down quickly off of that. And then, as a Nakiri normally does, just holds that all the way to the end of the blade, since the thin part is down at the bottom. These have a generous grind on them and pretty long blade path or blade road where the grind starts pretty high up on the blade. And the height on the blade is 47.5 millimeter from heel, chin area to spine. And the handle is just a basic, no frills, D-shaped, so it is kind of a right-hand biased wood handle with a plastic ferrule. There's a pretty big jump here between the plastic and the wood. You could sand this down if you wanted to. The handle actually feels pretty solid in use, and to me, given the pricing on the blade being very competitive, the handle's just functional enough. It's no big deal. It's not the nicest handle in the world, but it certainly gets the job done. It's actually a fairly substantial handle circumference-wise, a little over 3 inches. The blade itself's not a super tall Nakiri, but you've got a fairly thin neck on it, and enough space to get most people to get their finger in there for a pinch, so it gives you a little extra perceived height on the blade. And fit and finish on this blade is really nice. It's got pretty good finishing on the chin, or excuse me, the choil neck area and the spine, so it's really comfortable right out of the box. And this had a real nice out-of-the-box edge on it. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It was quite sharp. Didn't have a lot of bite to it or tooth on it, but the steel sharpened up easily. I threw it on a Suihiro Rika 5K stone for a very short amount of time, just touch the edge up and give it some tooth, and it sharpened up really nicely very, very quickly. So it took a real nice edge. I can't comment on edge retention, but I understand SLD's got a fair amount of wear resistance to it. The profile on this is a little more belly than a lot of Nakiris. This is going to be a little thing that separates this from a lot of other Nakiris, the curvature of the profile. And so if you like something that's going to have a little rock to it and not dead flat like a lot of Nakiris are really, really flat, this will give you a little bit of rock ability on the cutting board if you like to do that. These are quite thin at the edge, and they're really good performers. So this is a nice performing knife on a wide variety of ingredients. As I said, it doesn't stick too bad at all. In fact, it's quite non-stick. I was very impressed with that. And the tip is thin enough down at the bottom that it really goes through ingredients quite well. It was a pleasure to do things like onions. To show you our newfangled cutting board check here. We can see the profile of the blade, and it's there's not a long consistent flat spot. It's a kind of a rocker style blade, and I personally I'm not that comfortable with super flat Nakiris, so for me I liked using it, but again I'm not a full on Nakiri type person. But you can rock stuff really nice with this thing. You're not going to get super high without start getting in the tip, but for a lot of shorter ingredients like green onions and small diameter carrots and herbs and some things, it was really fun to use this blade. So it worked well. It was a nice performing Nakiri. So this is a real winner by Mark, and you've got some engraved kanji on there. It's a little hard to tell, but there it is on the blade. So an impressive offering from Mark. These are well worth their price tag. So this is the Kohetsu SLD Nakiri 165mm knife.